Fairy Knight Gog-Magog, rank Topaz Knight, a high-ranking fairy commander suited in bulky armor and brandishing a giant mace. To Gog-Magog, nothing would be worth the cost of jeopardizing the battle. When needed, they will throw themselves to the front lines, overpowering their opponents with their incredible might. Taking pride in their heritage, Gog-Magog use arms that have been passed down from a long line of ancestors. According to fairy tradition, the only way a fairy other than a Gog-Magog would ever be allowed use of their weapons and armor would be if an extremely decorated soldier challenged one to a duel and came out victorious. By far the most skilled fighters of the biped fairies, they avoid all-out offensives, favoring to adapt their strategy as required. Between their impenetrable armor and calculated, devastating blows, they are truly a force to be reckoned with. It is said that simply the glaring eyes protruding from deep within their helmet can send such pure dread in an opponent to induce surrender immediately. Excavation Engineer Knocker, rank Pawn, a quadruped fairy that dons a unique spiraling helmet. Knockers use this helmet like a drill and spin their bodies to burrow into the ground. The helmet is made more than durable enough to withstand this. This technique is primarily used to dig underground tunnels for transporting energy, but when in battle, knockers can use it to spring up from under their opponent with a shockingly powerful attack. The offensive ability of this assault makes them an enemy to be feared. Since they spend most of their day burrowed in the ground, they have even worse eyesight than that of a typical fairy. They also seem to be weak to sunlight and as so do not like to be above ground for longer than necessary. Because of this, there are actually fairies who don't even know knockers exist. Their constant burrowing has led them to discover many locations of hidden jewels and beds of ore. Sadly, they aren't the most generous fairies and tend to keep this information a secret from anyone, other fairies included. Elite Warrior Dvergr, rank Pawn, a quadruped fairy with a clunky helmet covering most of their head. Originally Ishi, their helmets are received from higher ranking officers when promoted. Their control of their abilities surpasses those of normal quadrupeds, and they have trained tirelessly to build an indomitable fortitude. Undoubtedly the strongest of all quadruped fairies, they may possibly hold their own with some of the bipeds. This is all greatly diminished by the fact that their helmet is so big and heavy they can barely see anything. Still, to a Dvergr, their helmet is their greatest source of pride. Though they take care of it with great dedication, its overall craftsmanship is substandard and it breaks easily upon impact. For this reason, many Dvergr learn how to forge and repair armor, and by result of this, assist in the maintenance of other fairies' armors as well. Some Dvergr have even gone so far as to retire from the battlefield completely and hammer away all day in their smithy to provide adequate weaponry for all fairy kind. Deadly Watcher Faun, rank Amethyst Knight, a biped fairy wizard that summons spirits known as Barghest to do its bidding in battle. Able to summon large numbers of spirits simultaneously, they are often likened to a shepherd with a herd of sheep on the battlefield. When fighting, they make a point of staying out of the action, providing assistance through their summons. Their offensive strategies consist of summoning enough Barghest to overwhelm their opponent, and if ever finding themselves in danger, they can easily recall any of their Barghest to act as a shield. Different from the relationship between infernal demons and the Umbra, which is based on a pact, the Faun manipulate their summons through mind control. This means those particularly gifted in mind manipulation learn to control much more than just Barghest. Legend even has it that a small town almost disappeared overnight after a Faun assumed control of the town's youth. Revenant Fairy Barghest, rank not applicable. A fairy spirit summoned by fauns. They tend to have a fairer complexion than flesh and blood fairies and the trademark of being faintly transparent. Though a spirit, the faun's magic gives them a corporeal form in this world. Fauns largely summon Barghest for this reason, so they can be a physical shield whenever harm comes a faun's way. Having no will of their own, the Barghest have no choice but to be used as their faun master sees fit. Reborn as a spirit after dying in Avalon, they could be said to be for fairies what wisps are to humans. The fairies have no culture of showing respect to their dead, so they are not honored. After some research, they seem unable to release negative vibes no matter how much they are tormented, so most fairies find little use for them. There are instances of some simply appearing out of thin air, wandering the forest aimlessly, but they are rarely tied to the earthly world for too long. Arsenal of Doom, Banchine Model P. Rank, not applicable. A rudimentary machine created by the fairies with the supposed purpose of scaring intruders. Simply put, it's a walking bomb. It contains enough explosives to clear away a large chunk of debris, so it's probably a good deal too strong for just intimidation tactics. If you walk into one, you're probably dead, but that's a design flaw that doesn't particularly bother the fairies. The bombs are built using pomegranates from the forest with a dash more firepower applied through fairy magic. Many fairies comment the noise it makes upon detonation sounds like a loud, banshee-esque scream, which they took into consideration when deciding its name. While able to move around by itself to some extent, in order to prevent any disastrous false detonations, it requires to be given an objective before it is armed. This configuration needs to, however, be done by a fairy, and the slightest impact after its completion will result in immediate detonation, making this job rather unpopular among fairies. Mischievous Firestarter, Salamander. Rank, Pawn. A fairy wizard with a flaming staff. Though a wizard by name, they are limited to using flame magic. Still, the flame magic of fairies can be quite powerful, and Salamander are able to create raging flames that grow many times larger than their tiny stature. While other fairies typically would value their assistance on the sidelines, sometimes their spells slip out of their control and fry their allies. Though flame magic is something that has existed among the fairies for ages, each fairy's aptitude is decided for the most part at birth and can range drastically. Salamanders display more natural talent than other fairies, and they show a fair bit of pride regarding this. Salamanders sometimes will sneak into human villages to play tricks by setting things on fire, so they are typically associated with fire to humans as well. Only as fairies are not known to use flame magic, they are simply considered to be fairies drawn to the flame. Heated Berserker, Mulciber. Rank, Topaz Knight. A biped spell knight with a gift for flame and stone magic. Skilled in both physical attacks and magic, Mulciber usually fight in a style that utilizes both. Their proficiency with defensive stone spells allows them to cast barriers on fellow fairy fighters, and their flame magic is said to be able to reach extreme temperatures. Those who anger Mulciber are often suddenly reduced to ash. Using magic fueled by negative vibes, burns induced by Mulciber take much longer to recover. Always seeking ways to strengthen their firepower, they hunt for negative vibes even more aggressively than regular fairies. To fairies, the power of flame magic can be so intense that it eventually consumes one's soul entirely, resulting in a complete loss of sanity. Mulciber are no exception in this matter, with many of them displaying questionable levels of mental stability. On the battlefield, they will simply go berserk, becoming unstoppable until they burn out of energy completely. Wicked Wizard, Sparcanagh. Rank, Spinel Knight. A biped fairy wizard with excellent knowledge of and proficiency in fairy magic. Many of Avalon's most powerful spellcasters are Sparcanagh. Their preferred way of fighting is to come at an opponent with an onslaught of spells, not giving them even the smallest of openings to respond. With negative vibes being the source of their magic power, the more they intimidate or scare an opponent, the more powerful their spells become. Naturally curious, they spend most of their days exploring the forest for ancient writings, hoping to learn about new spells or enhancements. And while most of their spells have practical application, some they discover turn out to be mostly useless. Always anxious to try their new magic out, their fellow fairies stand the risk of being debilitated by a spell the Sparcanagh don't yet understand.